Hi, I'm Jeff Crawford from Crawford's Auto Repair. We're going to demonstrate how to perform a transmission service on a 2007 Ford F-150. First, we're going to check the fluid level and condition. The dipstick is on the left side of the vehicle in the engine bay right here. It's yellow in color. An easy way to check the fluid condition is to put a small drop of it on a white piece of paper. Now I'll demonstrate a comparison of the fluid condition compared to new transmission fluid. So you can see the difference in fluid color. This fluid has 86,000 miles on it. That fluid condition is actually in pretty good condition for the mileage. It's due to be serviced. We're going to put the vehicle up in the air on a lift and service the transmission fluid now. I'm using a lift to show you easier with the camera how to remove the transmission pan to drain the fluid. There is no drain plug in this pan, so we have to remove the transmission pan itself. Requires a 10mm socket and ratchet. I'm going to use a power tool. It makes it go much faster. And you want to always leave one bolt in the pan so the pan doesn't fall down and spill transmission fluid everywhere. This is a large drain funnel to help try and catch as much of the fluid as we can. Typically a little bit is going to spill on the floor. After you get most of the bolts removed, the fluid's going to start coming out. I left the bolts in the back of the pan in. We're going to allow this to drain until it slows down. It helps make less of a mess. Sometimes I make a big mess, but we try not to. For the last two bolts, I'm going to use a hand ratchet for the reason that we don't want the pan to fall all at once. And as I loosen these bolts, the pan is going to start hanging more and more in the front. And then we can drain the fluid out of the front of the pan. Now as I loosen this, you can see the pan is dropping slowly in the front. Now the fluid is almost completely quit draining from the pan at this angle. At this point I'm going to remove the last bolt completely, hold the pan up with my hand, remove the bolt with the other hand, I'm going to lower the pan down with both hands. Fluid's going to continue to drain out of the transmission. Move the drain funnel back a little. Now we're going to pour the fluid out of the pan. This is a plug that's installed from the factory where the dipstick goes into the transmission. Typically when this is found in the pan, you can tell that the transmission pan has never been off. We don't need to put this back in when we put it back together. It's normal to find this part in the bottom of the pan. Transmission filter on this model, it just pulls out. Again, it can be a little messy, you have to be careful. This is the new transmission filter. If you notice, this filter has an orange seal on it. When I look at the old filter, that seal's not on it. The reason is it's stuck inside the transmission, so I'm going to remove that seal from the transmission and then install a new filter. To remove the seal, you can just take a small screwdriver, pry the seal out of the valve body of the transmission. Be careful not to score the surface where that seal seals. To install the new filter, you just firmly push it in and it sets in the valve body just like that. You can rotate it a little. There actually are some notches in the top of the filter. If you look here, these notches are going to line up with the bolts on the valve body and allow the filter to seat correctly into the... So as you're putting it in, turn it slightly and push up firmly. Now come over here and we'll take a look at the inside of the transmission pan and the condition. What you want to look for is any debris or buildup. So there is some, very minimal. This is probably some metal and some clutch material that's perfectly normal. There's also a magnet in here. This magnet collects any metallic material. As you can see, this is a normal amount of metallic material to find on a magnet. As the transmission wears and breaks in, this collects all the metallic stuff. We're going to clean this thoroughly with some rags. We're going to clean the pan out with some degreaser. This is a reusable pan gasket on this model, so we're going to reuse it. Typically, if this gasket was, you know, if there's any signs of damage, it would need to be replaced, or if the vehicle was, you know, 10 or more years old, typically I'd want to replace this because it is made of rubber and it can deteriorate and leak after it's removed. But this is a new enough vehicle. The gasket's in good condition. We're going to reuse it. I'm going to use some simple disposable shop towels to remove this debris from the magnet and to wipe out the transmission pan. You just wipe it down. You don't have to get the magnet completely clean. All the stuff that's stuck to it it's not going to move once it's back in the transmission. Obviously it's metallic, it's stuck to a magnet, that's where it's going to stay. So we just want to remove, you know, at least 90% of the debris that we can. I'm going to use some brake parts cleaner to spray anything off the magnet that didn't come off with a rag. The magnet that's clean enough for reinstallation now. To clean the transmission pan, same thing. This pan's not very dirty. It may require more effort to clean vehicles if there's more debris in the pan. I'm just going to wipe it out. Over where the magnet is, obviously, there's a little more debris. I'm going to spray a little bit of brake parts cleaner in here and around the gasket sealing surface. another clean rag. Pan out. One more time. Reinstall the magnet. There's a location on the pan with the dimple in it on this model too. That's where the magnet goes. Just put it back there. They strategically place that in the correct location to gather the magnetic debris that's in the transmission. Okay, this part is done. Now we're going to clean the pan gasket and inspect it. To clean this, all you need to do is wipe it off with a clean rag. If you're servicing a transmission that has a cork gasket or a fiber gasket, the gasket would have to be replaced every time, and you would have to ensure that there was absolutely no oil or debris. Well, there's no debris on this, the same thing, but no oil. Any oil on a cork gasket or on the transmission surface when you install it will cause the gasket to slip, tear, and leak. These are much better gaskets. They're used on modern vehicles. They're a lot easier to install. They don't leak fluid as often. I definitely recommend using this style gasket whenever it's available for your vehicle. Now we're going to go back underneath the car and prepare the surface for the gasket to seal on the transmission. Same thing again. This vehicle is in pretty good condition. There's not a lot of debris up here. I'm simply going to wipe the excess fluid from around the edges where the pan and the pan gasket meet. And I want to make sure there's no dirt, debris. As I say, on this particular job, this is really easy because the vehicle was clean and it's relatively new. On older cars, this can be you have to scrape gaskets and spend a lot more time cleaning surfaces. All the surfaces are cleaned and ready. Now I'm going to take the pan with the magnet installed. The filter's already correctly installed in the vehicle. We're going to install this pan onto the transmission. So we just hold the pan up. I have a couple bolts in my hand. We're going to start a bolt over here, just finger tight. We're going to come back over here, start another bolt. Now all the bolts must be installed finger tight before the final tightening. If you tighten some of the bolts, the holes will not line up and you'll come to a standstill. Have to loosen all the bolts, start the procedure over. So now I have the remainder of the bolts. I'm going to put them all in the holes, just start them a couple threads. I'm going to use a wrench to start the bolts in the back of the pan because they're hard to get to with your fingers. So I'll just hand start them with the ratchet like this. Hold it up there, make sure it's straight. Run them in. Okay, all the bolts are now started. I'm going to go around and I'm going to snug all the bolts up with a 1/4-inch ratchet. On vehicles with cork gaskets or fiber gaskets, I would highly recommend looking up the torque specification and torquing these with a torque wrench. And again, to make sure there's no oil on the surfaces of the gasket when you're using a cork gasket especially, it is guaranteed to cause a leak immediately after replacement of the gasket. So with these modern gaskets, oil's not as critical and we can just wipe the excess oil off, install the pan. Now I'm back at the bolt I started on. I'm going to go back around all of them just one more time, double check that they're all tight. Just in case I accidentally missed a bolt, we don't want to leave anything loose. Could cause a leak. Back to the bolt I started on again. They all were tight, so we're going to call that good. At this time, there's some fluid that's spilled on the vehicle and on the bottom of the transmission pan. I'm going to use some brake parts cleaner, which I've installed in a pressurized can. We're going to clean that off, wipe it off with the rag again. Okay, I've sprayed off any excess dirt and transmission fluid that was spilled on the vehicle. I'm just going to wipe it down with the rag. Okay, now we're going to lower the vehicle, install 4 quarts of transmission fluid, start the vehicle, allow it to warm up slightly, check the fluid level, fill it up until the dipstick is at the cold fill level. I'll demonstrate that to you. Then we're going to drive the vehicle, come back to the shop, double check the fluid again to make sure that the fluid is at the correct level when the engine is hot. Typically a dipstick on a transmission will have a cold fill level and a hot fill level. I'm going to use my stool because I'm short. This is a tall truck. Here's the transmission funnel. Obviously we want to make sure that the inside of the funnel is clean. There's no dirt or debris in it. If there is, I'd clean it out with some brake fluid. It looks pretty clean. Here's the dipstick. It's next to the left-hand valve cover, or excuse me, the right-hand valve cover of the truck. We're going to install a transmission funnel. It should fit and seal tightly into the dipstick tube. Now this vehicle, on the top of the dipstick, it says use Mercon V. That means Mercon 5 transmission fluid. The fluid that I'm going to use is multi-vehicle transmission fluid. I've confirmed on a piece of paper that this fluid meets or exceeds Mercon V specifications. So I'm installing Blue Mountain multi-vehicle ATF. I verified that this is the correct vehicle for the correct fluid for this vehicle. You want to always make sure modern vehicles all take different types of fluid. Sometimes you can get them from aftermarket suppliers such as this. Sometimes you have to get them from the dealership. So we're going to install 4 quarts of new transmission fluid, then we're going to start the vehicle. On smaller front-wheel drive vehicles, you would probably only want to install 3 quarts of fluid, or you may overfill the vehicle. So in this case it's a truck. I know that 4 quarts is a safe amount of fluid to start the engine and start checking. Then we're going to add fluid a half a quart at a time, which is a pint. If you add a whole quart at a time, you'll find that it's easy to overfill the transmission, and then the only way to drain the fluid is to remove the pan again. We don't want to have to do that. So. The funnel is installed into the dipstick tube. I'm just going to pour this fluid in. this time I'm going to remove the funnel. I have a rag here because I know there's going to be residual fluid coming out of the bottom. So just to stop that from dripping on the customer's car. Hold that there. Here's the dipstick. This can be deceitful and time consuming. If I put this dipstick in right now, I'm going to read transmission fluid level all the way up to here. It's not going to be accurate. What's happening is that dipstick has fluid all down through it. So we're going to let it sit for a couple minutes and idle. I would like to show you the marks on the dipstick. If you want to zoom in here, it says cold. So the cold level is down here. The full hot level is up here. It actually doesn't say hot, but that's what that means. So if you're when we're adding fluid right now, we're only going to fill it up to this level. Then we're going to drive the vehicle, and then we're going to fill it to anywhere in these crosshatches is actually acceptable. We're going to go for the top portion of the crosshatches. That's the safe operating range of this vehicle. Okay, hopefully it's been long enough. We'll attempt to check the fluid level now. Just insert the dipstick into the dipstick tube. Pull it back out. Now, if you look at this, there's fluid all the way up to here and down here. But on the back side, there's not. So on the back side, we're seeing fluid level only down to the bottom. We're going to have to let it sit and idle for a couple more minutes, and then we'll check that level again. Again, I'm sure we're going to have to add a little bit more fluid. This vehicle probably takes 5.5 quarts. Okay, I've added an additional 1.5 quart of transmission fluid to this. It's been sitting for about 5 minutes, running. I'm going to now remove the dipstick, wipe it off, check the fluid level, verify that it's within the cold range. Then we're going to go for a road test, pull it back in, verify there are no leaks, and the fluid level is at the hot range. Remove the dipstick, wipe it clean. Insert the dipstick completely into the dipstick tube. Make sure that it's seated. Remove the dipstick. Hold it level or down. The fluid level is approximately right here. The engine's been running for about probably 8 minutes now. So we're in the hot or warm fluid range. We're going to go road test it, make sure it doesn't climb any higher than that. Certainly hope that it doesn't, because if it's above the full level, we're going to have to loosen the pan and drain some fluid out. That's why I recommend that you fill the fluid only a half a quart at a time, maybe even a quarter of a quart, because as it gets to the full level, the fluid level will increase really fast. Overfilling it makes a lot more work for yourself. Okay, we're going to close the hood now. Go for a short road test. We'll pull it back in, verify there are no leaks, and finish up the job. Okay, I've driven the vehicle a couple miles. I pulled it back in on the drive-on. It's a little easier to verify we don't have any leaks or problems underneath. Now I'm going to check the fluid level, make sure it's within the hot range. Then I'm going to put the vehicle up in the air, make sure there are no leaks. At that time, the job will be complete. Same procedure. We're going to remove the dipstick, wipe it clean. Reinstall the dipstick. Remove the dipstick, hold it stable, don't ever hold it upside down. pull it out, check the fluid, you can verify it. It is right at the top of the full hot range. That's perfect. Next, we're going to put it back up in the air. Okay, we've got the vehicle up in the air now. We're just going to go underneath with a flashlight, inspect, make sure there are no leaks or problems under here. Everything looks completely dry. At this time, we're going to call the job complete and wrap it up. Again, the maintenance requirements on every vehicle are different. This particular vehicle, the factory service requires the transmission fluid be changed to 60,000 miles. It was a little bit overdue. The condition of the fluid was still good. No damage has been done, but it's best that you always refer to your owner's manual for required maintenance. Often vehicles aren't required for transmission services until 100,000 miles. Under severe conditions, this vehicle's maintenance was required at 30,000 miles. So depending on how you drive your vehicle and where you drive it determines how often maintenance is required. We hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching.